about Sammy when he was in the exact same role.
That's the truth.
And really wanted to be their lead singer.
Oh, are you kidding me? He just had a Twitter war with Neil Schon. He wanted an answer as to why he was removed from his duties. I mean, the guy left the band 10 years ago, maybe more. I mean, it's like so long ago. And, Neil Schon was kind of like, dude, it wasn't working out. You filled in for a tour. And, Jonathan Cain and I felt like we needed to go in another direction. And I think Jeff is phenomenal. I think he's an unbelievable singer, great frontman, great energy, great presence. He could sing the fuck out of a Van Halen song, I'll tell you that. And in fact, Jeff Scott Soto filled in for Dave when the Eat and Smile Band reunited at NAMM 2020, maybe? I don't know. I think it was something like that. If NAMM happened in 2020, I think it did in early 2020. They all got together to play. Steve Vai, Billy Sheehan, Greg Bissonette, and Brett Tuggle. And Dave was not there. If you remember, we even reported on Van Halen News that Dave was like, oh, I can't make it or something like that. This was after the whole debacle when they shut the show down. This is way after that. But they all got together and played some songs from the Eat 'em and Smile album. And Van Halen and Jeff Scott Soto stepped in and did the lead vocals, and it was phenomenal. I think it might be on YouTube. You can check that out. But anyway, yeah. So that's really cool. And he's an excellent singer. But he recently got in a whole Twitter war. But the bottom line is Neil Schon and Jonathan Cain, they wanted a Steve Perry voice. And Arnel Pineda sounds just like Steve Perry. He doesn't look like Steve Perry, but he sounds just like Steve Perry. He's got high energy, unbelievable voice. He's a small man with a monstrous voice. Unbelievable. It's kind of uncanny. It almost looks like a magic trick, the way he sings like Steve Perry. But that's what they wanted. It had nothing to do with you and your voice and your energy. Jeff is a totally different vibe. He got all upset. Bro, I never got an answer as to what, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, also want to let you know that Joe Satriani shed a little more light on the Chickenfoot situation when he recently did an interview, and that was sort of eye-opening. It was for Ultimate Classic Rock. He said Chickenfoot was completely out of control. It was just a band of separate people. No one can agree on anything because everyone's a solo artist. Everyone's a big shot, except for me, of course. And he said Sam eventually... Now, remember, Andy Johns did the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge album, and he was brought on to do the Chickenfoot album, and he said here, Sam eventually did all his own vocals at his own studio because after 2 days with Andy, he couldn't work with Andy anymore. So you remember that happened on the Fuck album, and Ted Templeman had to step in and do the vocals for Sam. He also said, it was rough getting this record done. I can't tell you. I can't believe that record got finished. Luckily, Mike Frazier came in at the last minute to save it and to help us. He also said the way things work in Chickenfoot, once Chad and Mike laid everything down, they flew home. That was it. No one ever did anything ever again, and I was left to do all the overdubs. So some of the Chickenfoot's dirt is coming out the barn, Dave. What do you think of this?
I don't see Mike as one of those guys who, walked in with a big ego and felt like he was like this huge rock star. That doesn't make sense to me. Because by all accounts, Mike is like the last person to be doing that.
Right.
So I was kind of surprised to hear that. Not that he pointed out Mike specifically, but it always amazes me how, I don't know how they talk Sam into getting the same producer that he didn't get along with in Van Halen.
That was crazy.
And then surprise,
yeah.
He doesn't get along with him. By all accounts, Sam was the guy who was calling a lot of the shots in that band.
Oh, yeah.
So I was really surprised he agreed to it. Maybe he thought Andy changed or something like that, and then it turned out he didn't. The thing is that, say what you want about Andy Johns, but he gets a really good sound.
Oh, yeah.
Out of band.
Oh, yeah. Big time. That's for sure. So now, also want to let you guys know that Ted Nugent was recently interviewed. Now, we all know that everybody claims that Van Halen's first tour was with who, Dave? Who always says we took Van Halen out on their first tour? Who's that?
That was Journey.
Oh, how dare you. I set you right up on the rim. Black Sabbath.
Oh, well, that was after Journey.
After Journey?
Yeah, they opened?
And they opened for Journey on the festival date. But I'm talking about the tour, like a first tour. Wasn't it Black Sabbath?
No, they opened up for Journey. It was Van Halen. They opened up, and then Ronnie Montrose was the second act. And then it was Journey.
But that wasn't...
After that, they got the Black Sabbath gig.
Well, okay. That is true. You're right. But Black Sabbath is the one who claimed we took them out on their first tour. I don't know. Now, according to Ted Nugent, says a lot of people go ahead and say Van Halen's first tour was with Black Sabbath. Well, that's not true. Their first tour was opening up for Me, and it was the whole band. They were just absolutely killer, uninhibited and irreverent firestorm of rock and roll. Eddie and I connected immediately because I used the Gibson Birdland, which was a really unique guitar in the world of rock and roll, and I'm the only guy, and Eddie, of course, who created his own guitars. So we got together during the first sound check, and I played my Birdland through his rig, and he played his Eddie Van Halen guitar through my Fender amps. And he said that he really bonded with Eddie on that tour, and that he should be the one who should get the claim to fame of giving them their first shot. So I think we have to go to Greg on that. He might know the history on Nuge to see if the Nuge was the guy who was giving Van Halen their first opening shot. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't remember that unless it was like a one-off. Or, something like that.
He
maybe
did
it was
say
like
tour.
the first
He said
time they ever played, but
no, he said their first tour. Their first tour. Not the first time they played. They played for many years.
Wow.
Isn't that weird? I don't remember that at all.
That's not ringing a bell.
And now, one thing we can't say that Ted was drunk or anything, because he's like one of those sober dudes, right?
Maybe he had a little too much wang tang poo tang.
We know he had plenty of that. The guy put out an album called When You Can't Lick 'Em, Lick 'Em. So anyway, just to wrap up Van Halen news, Dave, I found this interesting website, Dave. It's called MOFI.com. MOFI. That stands for Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. And what this is they announced that they are going to be putting out the first 6 Van Halen Roth era albums on SACD, which is Super Audio CD, which is supposed to be the successor of the compact disc. The SACD format allows multiple audio channels, and they're selling them, Dave, for $29.99 each. And it has each of the albums, Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2, Women and Children First, Fair Warning, Diver Down in 1984. And they all said, coming soon. And it says on the top of the album art, original master recording. What do you make of this?
They're still making SACDs?
Can you believe that? Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, CDs are having enough trouble being made these days.
I know.
I just saw that vinyl has outsold CDs for the first time in a long time.
Well, I have to say, though, they said that CD sales are up 21% this year.
I did see that CD sales went up, which was encouraging. Mm-hmm. But apparently vinyl sales went up more and outsold CDs for the first time in, since who knows when.
That's the other thing. Interesting.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you need a special player to play the SACD?
I don't believe so. And now the other thing is, every time I saw those in the store, I always thought they were a scam. Like, seriously, if I took an SACD and another regular CD of the same album and played it next to each other, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference.
Well, I know I wouldn't because my ears are shot and I just don't have an appreciation for that kind of fine sound quality.
What's
and
that?
I don't have
What's
a sound
that?
system that is so awesome that I could tell the difference.
That's true. That's true. Your ears are shot. Everything's shot. On top of your ears, there's other things that are shot. We won't get into that. But that wraps up Van Halen news.
And that's the way it is. Good night.
And we have a special interview that Dave and I did with rock journalist Steve Rosen. Now, Steve is not just your everyday run-of-the-mill rock journalist. He has written for so many different magazines through the years, but more importantly, he had a very strong relationship and bond with Eddie Van Halen through the years, and he has been interviewing Ed since day one, from the early days, let's say, not day one, but let's just say their first Van Halen album. After the backyard parties, but before the first album, right from the beginning, and he had a relationship with him right up to 2003, and Steve is putting out a 500-page book on Ed. It is untitled. It is not been announced as to when it's coming out, but he did say sometime this spring. And he's self-publishing it because he's had publisher interest, but they wanted to cut it down to 200 pages to be a more generic book. And Steve, being the rock and roll icon that he is, refused and he wants to go rogue and do it himself. So he is working on that, and he is coming on with us here. We're having a deep dive conversation. It's over an hour long. I think it's something like 75 minutes long. So it is a nice deep dive interview. We get into all kinds of nitty gritty about his experience with Ed and all his different positions. He has a very unique thoughts on all different things. Not exactly what you'd think, but he has specific ideas and thoughts that he gives his opinion on things. He also talks about the different experiences he's had with Ed, and he talks about this book and how this book came about. It's an interesting journey. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a really good story. Dave and I get into it all with him. But before that happens, we got to kick off the year with some new mailbag letters. And that is all coming up next. Take a listen.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Van Halen first play in a band, and I wasn't in the band back in high school. I listened to him play, I watched him play, and I said, you know what he does with his hands, I want to do with my feet. I want to do with my voice. He was kind of a mentor of mine.
If you need a dose of VH, get a taste of the closest thing. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band, playing all the hits from the David Lee Roth era, the first classic 6 albums, plus deep cuts, some of which have never been played live before by the band. They even throw in popular tracks from the Sammy Hagar era and solo hits. The most viewed Van Halen tribute band on YouTube, Romeo Delight, doing customized recreations of staging, instruments, and costumes from the classic Van Halen era. They even perform entire Van Halen albums in sequence. Romeo Delight plays theaters, casinos, summer indoor and outdoor festivals, and special events. They're also available for private parties. To contact them, call Bud Blanche at 215-704-5144. That's 215-704-5144. Or via email at sonicparade1@yahoo.com. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band.
Author Greg Renoff is back with a new book, Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music. the new biography of the record producer Ted Templeman, who went on to produce Van Halen, the Doobie Brothers, Van Morrison, Aerosmith, Sammy Hagar, and more. The book, which runs $19.95, and it's currently available at Amazon.com. From the